Yes, ma. Can any one of you tell what do you mean by log-based recovery? Log-based recovery. Can any one of you tell what do you mean by log-based recovery? Am I audible? Okay. What are the different kinds of logs we are going to maintain, ma? What are the different kinds of logs we are going to maintain? Different kinds of logs we are going to maintain. I'm not talking about log, ma. Logs. Logs. Rohit, it is not log-based recovery. I'm talking about, okay, not in multiple granularity. I'm talking about log-based recovery. Surya, log-based recovery. Amma, did we talk about the two mechanisms? The first one is deferred database modification, and the second one, immediate database modification. Deferred database modification and immediate database modification. So in that, what were the logs we maintained? Logs maintained. I hope you can see the document, ma. So I told you you're going to work with three kinds of logs. One is for start, one is for update, the other one is for finish. Yes or no? T1, comma, start. Was this a log record when the transaction entered the system? I think today I can give attendance for only 2 or 3 people, ma. One is 72. I'm noting them down. Roll number 7D, roll number 72, 6D. That's it. So only 3 are present in the class. 72, 7D, and 6D. Yes, what about others? Are you in the class, ma? So once I talk about attendance, you people are responding. Otherwise, no response. Okay, now can you tell me what I mean by deferred database modification with respect to log-based recovery? Deferred database modification with reference to log-based recovery. Database will change if we have both and start. Okay. And if the transaction does not modify the database until it has committed. The changes would be reflected after it has committed, right? 72. Okay, fine. So what I'm trying to do in deferred data modification is I'm just trying to defer the updates. Yes or no? I'm just trying to defer the updates made by the transaction. Delay the update operations. Yes or no? Okay, ma, all of you just go through the PPT. It's not PPT, it's the document for 2 minutes and just try to ask me if at all you have any questions, ma. So recovery and atomicity is the topic, what we were discussing in the previous class. To ensure atomicity despite failures, what we are trying to do, we follow the approaches. Log-based recovery is the first approach. And for this, we are keeping a log on a stable storage, which is a sequence of log records. The log is a sequence of log records, and it only maintains the update activities of the database. You're just interested about the update activities. You're not going to maintain any of the read operations, ma. So whenever you work with log-based recovery, when transaction TI starts, a log called TI comma start is recorded. TI comma start is recorded, and usually a log with respect to an update operation looks something like this, ma. And it is not necessary that this would be the same for your immediate as well as deferred database modification. Okay. Now ti, x is the variable name, v1 is the original value, vt is the new value. So ti made some change to x, which original value was v1 and the updated value is v2. So this is the way you're going to write a log record. And once you feel that your transaction is complete, you are going to enter or have a log record called ti, commit. Okay. Now, deferred database modification. It records all the database modifications in the log, but defers the execution of all write operations. So it is trying to just delay the execution of all write operations until the transaction partially commits. Until the transaction partially commits, you're just trying to defer the execution of all write operations. And it only works with the concept of a redo operation. Once there is a failure, it performs a redo operation. Okay. So what is redo? Already I told you in the previous class, and this was the example I've given you. T0 start, T0A950. Only the update operations are being converted into logs, along with T0 start, and if at all you have a T0 commit. Okay, so here T0 start is there, T1 commit is there, then you can redo this operation. T0 start and T0 commit is there, you can redo this operation. T1 start, update is there, but there is no commit, hence you have to forego this operations. Same with the case C. So there is T0 start, T0 commit, there is T1 start, T0 commit, hence you can redo both the operations. So whenever you're working with deferred database modification, you're going to store only the new value. You're going to store only the new value, because whatever the transaction is making the changes, that would be in the RAM or the shared memory, not in the database. Yesterday, I've given you a clear example on that. So no redo actions need to be taken with respect to the first case, redo T0, and in the third case, redo T0 as well as redo T1. What is the reason? Because there is start as well as commit. And immediate database modification, you have to store the old value as well as the new value. You have to store old value as well as the new value. So see here. What I'm trying to do over here is T0 start. T0 is making a change to A. The old value is 1000. The new value is 950. So maybe I'm trying to subtract 50 from 1000. Now here what's happening? I can perform both operations. One is undo of T and redo of T. So whenever the transaction fails, you're going to perform undo. Whenever the transaction executes, you're going to perform redo. See, recovery procedure has two operations instead of one. Undo restores the value of all data items updated by TI. And redo sets the value of all data items updated by TI. Restores is undo, sets is redo. Okay. Now here, T0 start, T0A 1950, T0B 2050. Old value, new value. Since there is no commit, I have to go with the old value. If at all there is T0, commit, I have to go with 950 and 250. That is the concept of your immediate database modification. Okay. Is it clear, Amma? Is it clear? Or any issues? Now see, for lengthier transactions, Writing log record would be a very lengthy process and memory consuming process. It would be a memory consuming process. So in order to eliminate writing the concept of log records over and over, we are going to work with one more recovery mechanism, which is called as checkpoint. So you're trying to put checkpoints whenever you feel that something has already been executed, so that you're not going to recheck the same thing again and again. You're going to work with a checkpoint. So if at all you have read 5 pages from a textbook, in order to avoid reading those 5 pages, what you try to do is you try to fold the page until where you read, so that you can start from the next point. The same concept applies for your checkpoint. Okay, so recovery using checkpoint. Whenever there is a failure, this is a checkpoint. If at all something was already tested before this checkpoint, I need not go with the same thing again. I can start from here. So maybe here T1, T2, T3 were there. Here T4, T5, T6 are there. So there is a failure over here. I can go back from this particular point until I see a checkpoint, a log of checkpoint. Always have to go from back to front. That is what I've told you. Okay. Right. So this is about your checkpoints. And now we are going to work with something called as shadow paging. There's something called as shadow paging. And most of you know this concept, because we have already worked with this particular concept in the first unit. Okay, now see, this is also one of your recovery mechanisms. This is also one of your recovery mechanisms. So it is acting as an alternative to log-based recovery. And this is useful whenever you're working with transactions serially. So again, the condition is you have to work with the execution of transaction serially. And the main idea of shadow paging would be you have to maintain 2 page tables. Already you might have seen the concept of page table in your operating system. Okay, so I'm not going to work with the complete scenario over here. What is a page table? All that stuff, I'm not going to work with. So I'm going to just tell you the main idea, how the working would be. Maintain 2 page tables during the lifetime of the execution of a transaction. And the 2 page tables are named as the current page table and the shadow page table. The shadow page table would be a replica of the current page table. The shadow page table would be replica of the current page table at the beginning. Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to store the shadow page table in a non-volatile storage. I hope you know the difference between volatile and non-volatile storage, such that the state of database prior to the transaction execution may be recovered. So why I'm storing it in non-volatile storage is, if at all there is some sort of failure, I would be able to recover the database. Okay, now, and whenever you're talking about the shadow paging concept, the shadow page table is never modified during transaction. The shadow page table is never modified during the concept of a transaction. Rather, you're working with the current page table. You're working with the current page table. And already I told you, to start with, both the page tables are identical. Both the page tables are identical, and only the current page table is used for data item access. Okay. So see, Amma, This is, I'm working with a page address on which I'm trying to do modifications. This is the current page. This particular thing is the current page, and this particular thing is the shadow page. So which is a replica of this. Now, if at all there are any kind of modifications, that would be with respect to the current page. So a transaction is trying to modify. A transaction is trying to modify maybe the database items, then it would be affected in the current page only. It is not affected in the shadow page. Try to see this. So current page is this. The modifications are being pointed to the current page. Now, whenever I say the particular transaction has executed, then the shadow page would be updated with the current page whose modifications have been successfully executed. Whose modifications have been successfully executed. So try to see, Amma, when the transaction is committed, the shadow page, when the transaction is committed, the shadow page entry becomes a copy of the current page table entry. And the disk block with the old data is released. So wherever the old copy of the database was residing, that particular old block is released, removed, because now the current data which is being modified by the transaction is put into the shadow page. Okay, if the shadow is stored in non-volatile memory and a system crash occurs, then the shadow page is copied into the current page table. If at all there occurs a system crash, the shadow page is copied into the current page table. Okay, which will ensure that the shadow page will point to the data pages corresponding to the state of the database prior to any transaction. Since both are identical, there would be no change of data that would exist. Okay, that is the concept of your shadow paging. Just for your simplicity explanation, I've given you this one. Okay. Is it clear, the concept of your shadow paging, or you have any issues? Could any one of you respond if clear or no? See, if at all you wish, you can go with the concept of your page table as you work in your operating systems. But most of the time, whatever I've told you, that is more than enough. This particular concept is more than enough because I'm working with the current page as well as the shadow page, along with the modifications that are done with respect to the database. Whatever the changes that are being done, it would be reflected to the current page only. Remember that. Okay. And the next one would be recovery with concurrent transactions. Recovery with concurrent transactions. Okay, again, we are going to work with the concept of log-based recovery, but we are just trying to modify the concept of log-based recovery in order to allow multiple transactions to execute concurrently. So when I was talking about log-based recovery, what I told you, if at all you remember, I'm just showing you that. I hope you remember this one. We assume that the transactions run serially. But there might be a case when I need to recover the database back into its original position whenever the transactions are running concurrently. So what I have to do is I'm just trying to modify the concept of log-based recovery in order to work with concurrent execution of transactions. Okay. Now see, we modify the log-based recovery scheme and all the transactions share a single disk buffer. And the operations with respect to all the transactions would be recorded into a single log. All the transactions actions would be recorded into a single log. And a buffer block can have data items updated by one or more transactions. That is obvious. Why it is obvious? Because there might be n number of transactions working at the same time. T1, T2, T3. And those three transactions might be working with the data items. And all the data items that have been updated would be stored into a buffer block. Okay. And we are going to work with the concept of concurrency control using strict two-phase locking. Why I'm using the concept of strict two-phase locking here would be because I do not want to perform undo operations. It's not perform, but I cannot perform undo operations if at all n number of transactions try to modify a single database object. So it would be difficult for me to perform undo if at all a transaction T1 updates say, then a transaction T2 updates say, then a transaction T3 updates say, and finally if at all T1 is aborting. So the changes made by T1 on A would not be sustained, and that updated value is being used by T2. So that is the problem. Now, in recovery with multiple transaction, logging is done as we have done in log-based recovery. But the additional thing would be you're also going to work with checkpointing techniques. You're also going to perform with checkpointing techniques. Several transactions may be active when a checkpoint is performed. Now, what I'm trying to do here would be, I'm just trying to modify the checkpoint. CP stands for checkpoint, comma, L. So this is the modification for the checkpoint log record, whatever I'm trying to do over here, where L is the list of transactions that is active when you're trying to create a checkpoint. Okay. So checkpoints are performed as before, but the only modification is this particular concept. CP stands for checkpoint, comma, L, where L is the list of transactions active. L is the list of transactions that are active at the time of you creating the checkpoint. And whenever you're performing a checkpoint, we have to assume that no updations are being performed. So the assumption would be there are no updations that are being performed with respect to the database items whenever I do checkpointing. Okay. And when the system recovers from a crash, it first does the following. So whenever there is a crash, there is a problem, and the system is trying to recover, then we perform the following. So here we are going to work with undo and redo operations. We are going to work with undo and redo operations. Firstly, the first step would be initialize undo list and redo list to empty. So I'm maintaining two lists over here. One is an undo list. The other one is a redo list. So my first step or my first job would be I have to make both the lists empty. I have to make both the lists empty and scan the log backwards from the end. Scan the log backwards from the end. So before a crash occurs, you might have already worked with a set of transactions. And for each transaction that are working concurrently, there might be a set of logs that have been recorded. Okay. So once a crash occurs, first job would be you're going to make undo list, redo list empty. The second step would be you have to scan backwards. You have to scan backwards the log record and stop whenever you see the first checkpoint. Stop whenever you see the first checkpoint, comma L. Okay, so this is what I mean to say. Scan the log backwards from the end, stopping when the first checkpoint L record is found. Now for each record found during the backward scan, if the record is ti comma commit, whenever I see there is a ti comma commit, what I have to do? I have to add it to the redo list. Why I'm specifying here ti comma commit ma? Because n number of transactions are working. N number of transactions are working. That is the reason I'm specifying ti, where I is from 1 to n. I is from 1 to n. And add this to redo list. If the record is ti comma start, then if ti is not in the redo list, if the record is ti comma start, the log record is ti comma start, and that particular ti is not in the redo list, meaning the particular transaction did not commit, then what you have to do? You have to roll back that particular transaction. Then you have to add it to the undo list. Okay. For every ti in L, if ti is not in redo list, add it to undo list. So if at all by mistake there are some transactions which are not present in undo as well as redo, what is the condition is you have to add them to the undo list. So this is the process of working with the log records. Now the recovery process continues as follows. Scan the log backwards from the most recent record, stopping when ti start records have been encountered. So what I have to do, again I have to scan back the log, stopping when ti comma start. In the previous case, I was working with checkpoint L. In this case, I'm working with ti start. Records have been encountered for every ti in undo list. So maybe there is t1 in the undo list and I have got t1 comma start in the log records. So what you have to do? You have to perform an undo operation. You have to perform an undo operation and locate the most recent checkpoint L. Scan log forwards from the checkpoint L record till the end of the log. So what you do? You perform all undo operations with respect to only ti comma start, then locate the most recent checkpoint L, and from that particular checkpoint L, you scan forward towards the right side and see for ti comma commit. If at all you have ti comma commit, you're going to perform a redo operation. That belongs to a redo list. So this is the way you're going to perform recovery for multiple transactions. You have any questions with this, you can ask. You have any questions with this, you can ask. You want to go through the PPT for 2 minutes, you can go. Yes, ma, any questions you have? Any problems? All of you, could you please respond? Okay. So this completes the 4th unit, ma. Any issues in transactions? The complete unit, ma. What is a transaction? Asset properties, then states of a transaction, then what I mean by concurrent execution of transaction. Then came the concept of schedules, serializability, serializability. In serializability, I think we have studied conflict and view serializability. Then we studied about concurrency control protocols, wherein we have studied about log-based protocols, timestamp-based protocols, multiple granularity, graph-based protocols, validation-based protocols, all this stuff. And after that, the last topic was recovery and atomicity. So I hope these were the things what we have covered. So if at all you have any problems in the complete unit, you can just come up with your questions, ma. Can I assume you are clear with all the topics? Okay, Amma, fine. Now, going with the fifth unit, ma, file organization. We are going to work with file organization, and some of the topics you might already been knowing, ma. So, has anyone got an idea of hashing indexing, ma? Hashing and indexing. Anyone has an idea of hashing and indexing? Okay, good. So most of you have the idea, right? So what are the different kinds of hashing techniques? Different kinds of hashing techniques, ma? Different kinds of hashing techniques. Linear probing, quadratic probing, okay. Rehashing, good. Static hashing. Then you have the dynamic hashing is there, right? Good. Now, what do you mean by hashing? Why it is important? What do you mean by hashing? Why it is important? Is it important, firstly? It is important. Why it is important, ma? Why it is important? To retrieve data easily, to search that data easily. Okay. Good, good. So I think any most of you can deliver a lecture on in the fifth unit, ma. It is technique to search the location of data without using a good. So I can say that in order to search data faster, I can use the concept of hashing. Is it okay? Shavya has already written that. Fine. Good, ma. So I think the fifth unit can be taught by any one of you, ma, because it consists of your hashing techniques. Not going to cover all the hashing techniques over here. You have got indexing, all that stuff, ma. So who is ready to give a presentation? Anyone ready to give a presentation? No response. of files. Then you have indexing, hashing. That's it. The next important topic would be you have the concept of tree structure indexing, in which you are going to study B+ trees and ISAM. How many of you are aware of trees, ma? Okay, I'm not asking for any presentation, right? How many of you are aware of trees? Trees, yes, okay. So it would be easy for you to understand. Right, right. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just give a brief introduction about file organization. Most of you know what a file is, right? I can simply say file is a collection of records. I think no issues with that definition, right? Now see, the file is basically a collection of records. This is unit 5, ma. The concept, the topic is file organization. Okay. And whenever I'm talking about file, ma, a file is a collection of records. And in order to access the records, we can use a primary key. So all of you know what a primary key is. And the file organization is a logical relationship that is existing among various records that are stored. Okay. And file organization is used to describe the way in which the records are stored in terms of blocks. Okay, so how the records are stored, what is the way in which the records are stored into blocks of memory is the concept of your file organization. Okay, and whenever I'm talking about file organization, types of file organization are sequential file organization, heap file organization, hash, ISAM, B+ tree, and clustered file organization. So we'll be talking about most of the things here. ISAM stands for Index Sequential Access Method. There's B+ tree, there's hash file organization, heap file organization, and sequential file organization. And the most easiest among all these file organizations is the sequential file organization. Sequential file organization. So see, I'm not spending a lot of time again specifying how a file look like, where the file is actually stored. So I'm not talking about a file is a place on the disk where you store data permanently. All the definition, all of you know. So I'm just talking about it as a collection of records and how those records are organized. That is what we are interested in. So mainly we are dealing with how actually the data is stored in this particular unit. Okay. So these are the different kinds of organizations. And the first one is sequential file organization. This is one of the easiest methods, and the name itself specifies that all the files are sequentially organized or sequentially stored. And whenever I'm talking about sequential file organization, it can be done in two ways. It can be done in two ways. The first one is pile file method, and the second one is sorted method. So the first one is pile file method of storing. The second one is sorted file method. Okay, this is the sorted file method, and the first one is pile file. And in this method, we store the records in a sequence, that is one after the other. Record here would be a row of a table. So I'm talking in terms of databases. Since I'm talking in terms of databases, the record would be a row of a table. Okay. And here the records are inserted into the file one after the other, or the way in which they enter the system. Okay, in this method, we store the record in a sequence. Here, the records will be inserted in order in which they are inserted into the tables. So there also, I can say n number of records are in a table or n number of rows are in a table. Here, I'm talking about a row with respect to a record. So there in a table, it would be row. Here, it would be a record. Okay. Now, in case of updating or deleting of any record, the record would be searched first in the memory blocks, and if at all it is found, then it would be deleted or updated. If at all the record is not found, I cannot update or delete the record. Maybe some other person has deleted the record already. Okay, and the pile file method looks some way like this: record 1, record 3, so on, record 9, record 8. This is the beginning of the file and this is the end of a file. So whenever you want to insert a new record into this particular file, that would be inserted at the end of the file, and that new record becomes the new end of the file. Okay, so see here. Suppose we have 4 records already: R1, R3, R9, R8. I'm only assuming these 4 records. I don't know this particular number. So these are the records that are already existing in the file. These are the records that are already existing in the file. And I want to add a new record, R2, into the file. Then what I'm trying to do is, in the pile file method, I'm just adding that record at the end of the file. So this is a new record that needs to be added. That would be added at the end of this particular file. Okay, so this is some basics about your pile file method. The pile file method. And the second one is sorted file method. So what will happen here? The records would be in the sorted order. In this method, the new record is always inserted at the file's end, and then it would be sorted in sequence. And the order might be determined by the person who is storing. Okay, so first what will happen? I'm adding at the end of the file, and then I'm putting it in the right position wherever it is. So R8 will come here, R9 will go here. This is the default diagram I've taken. Now see, insertion of a new record. So the record is like that. Sorry, the file is like this: R1, R3, R6, R7. Suppose there is a pre-existing sequence, which is nothing but this particular sequence is existing, and I want to add a new record, R2. It might be based upon a particular key on which you want to insert. So based on a particular key you want to insert, that can be the condition. Okay, suppose a new record R2 has to be inserted into the sequence, this particular sequence, then it will be inserted at the end of the file. Firstly, so R7 is the end of the file, and the new end of file would be R2 after inserting the new record. Then what I'm trying to do, because this is a sorted method, R2 has to go into its proper position. That is nothing but after R1. So the updated sequence would be R1. And here I'm trying to insert R2. That is the reason I've taken this in different color, followed by R3. And again, R7 would be the end of the file, because this new end of file has been put into its proper position, which is coming after R1. So these are the two methods in your sequential file organization. Is it clear? Or any problem with the first organization technique? Is it clear, all of you? Just go through this once. Yes, Ma, is it clear? Is your heap file organization, Ma. Heap file organization. Yes, are you able to hear me? Okay, shall I continue or shall I start with the activities, ma? So that I can cover all the lab activities now. Activities.